Tell me what your life was like before you died.
When I was 10, a friend of mine was murdered, and unfortunately, her mother killed her. So I had just been slept over at her house, and so when this happened, it literally shattered my entire world. Because when you're 10, you don't have this idea that a mother could kill her child. That's not in the realm of possible. So I remember walking home from school. I remember the exact moment where I was, because when this trauma happened in my life, everything that I thought was true was no longer true. And so I remember walking home from school, and in my mind, I said to myself, I'm not believing in God anymore. Because if that can happen, then there's definitely no God. In the year 2000 was when it happened. And so the first thing that happened was my friend said, you should get a psychic reading. And I was like, why would you even waste your money on something like that? It's fake. But, I thought you were an intelligent woman. What are you doing? And she said, no, Stephanie, let me lend you my tape. And back then it was the cassette tapes. So the guy records it. So I went home, I listened to it, and he literally read everything about her, things he could not have possibly known. So I said, okay, I'll make an appointment. So I made the appointment with him, and I was skeptical. I didn't believe in anything. And I told him, I said, I'm just not going to really say much because I'm kind of testing you, because I don't believe in this really. But he was very cool and, about it all. And he read my heart and soul in such a way that nobody could ever know. And he said to me, Stephanie, you're a healer and a teacher. And it resonated in my soul and in my heart, because I had been delving deeply into, maybe I should become an acupuncturist. I want to help people at a very deep level. I knew that already. And when he said healer, I was like, ding, 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 this is true. And so because that reading was reading my heart and soul, it actually bursted me wide open. It was my catalyst for my spiritual awakening. I was blown away. I was like, if he can know things, then there's so much more. And that night when I was trying to sleep, I didn't sleep the entire night. I had my eyes closed, and all I could see was the universe. I was seeing in my third eye the entire universe, because it had busted wide open, and I was there now. I was seeing it. And so that was a memorable experience. It was the catalyst of my spiritual awakening. And then it was the tap, tap, tap. Things were happening, but boom, 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 boom. That year, in rapid succession, I was having major health problems, but I was sick. And then, so I don't know. Then my father was actually diagnosed with terminal cancer, but something else happened prior to that. Nobody knew he had cancer. He didn't know. Nothing was happening, in that way. But a couple months before his diagnosis, during my sleep time, and I don't call it a dream because it was a spiritual experience. His soul was before me, and my father was a psychologist, and he was very into his work, which I don't blame him. It's fascinating. And he was all about helping his patients. And he, very intellectually focused, but he kind of forgot about his family. So he didn't really pay much attention to us. He was emotionally disconnected and distant. So he was there as the father and my mom's husband, but not really interacting much, just, working all the time. So in this experience, his soul was standing before me, and I had this rage that I didn't know I had, and it came out of me. And you know how in those experiences, it's really telepathic, but the rage poured out of me. Almost, I compare it to like a fire breathing dragon, because it's just pouring out, and it was a rage that's not humanly possible. And I said to him in this, Dad, you were never there for me. You never touched me, never gave me affection, never said I love you. You did nothing for me as a father, nothing. And he stood there with such innocence on his face and shock, because he didn't know that his behavior actually had an effect on others. That was new to him. He had no clue. He was just living his life. And maybe because he thought he was giving so much in service, that was his role. Great. Kudos to you. But you have 3 kids and a wife. But anyway, so he had so much innocence, so much like, I'm sorry. And the innocence was so pure. The benevolence was so strong. And the not wanting to do harm. And when I saw all of that in him, it was an immediate forgiveness, like a forgiveness of that there's nothing to forgive. And what we have between us is pure, unconditional love. And it was in an instant. It all washed away. We had unconditional love between us, and that was it. And I woke up with that. And 2 months later, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and I dropped everything. I was living in Denver, Colorado, and I moved home to take care of him. And so I'm having these profound spiritual experiences. I'm having my awakening, and then I go home to take care of him. He's in the death process having his spiritual awakening. So we got to travel along in that way for 5 months. He died 5 months later, but we had that time together, and the words weren't spoken. I never said anything to him about my experience with our souls, but the healing that had happened between our souls manifested in life between us, where it was pure, unconditional love and beautiful bonding, and no words needed to be spoken, but the love was just there, and it was a gift. I did have an experience with my mother's higher self that showed me why I chose her. She is a narcissist, and I actually went no contact with her 14 years ago. But one day I was driving in my car, her higher self just quickly swooped in, like by the driver's window. I'm driving, and she visited me. And when I felt her come to me, I felt love from her for the first time in my life. And that told me, wow, I've never felt love from my mother at all, not for 1 second, until that moment, because that was the moment I felt it for the first time. So, but it was from her soul. And she said to me only one thing. She said, I wanted you to be in your power. So I got it, that she was my bully, and I had to stand up for myself and become strong and create boundaries and speak up for myself. For whatever reason, maybe I hadn't done that in a past life. I have no idea. But I had been told by a healer once, because I was in the Holocaust in another lifetime, and I was told your mother was the one who, I was killed in the gas chamber, but she's the one who kind of like operated it and killed me. Who knows? I don't have a direct memory of, I have memories of that lifetime, but not of her being there, but I believe it. That's a whole other story. I thought I had the greatest family and that we were perfect. It wasn't until a little bit later that I realized, oh my God, that was highly abusive, actually. I was abused. It's an inner strength, I think, that gets people through it. And then a determination to do well, to be your best self. I had a dream in which it's the only dream that I know I have had with my spirit guide. And my spirit guide came to me and said, you are Jesus. And I said, no. And he said, no, you are Jesus. And I was like, okay, there can be no ego in knowing about this. But then when I woke up, I was like, okay, let me try to analyze this. Okay, I'm a healer. I'm a way shower. I'm all about love and forgiveness. Okay, I get it. I'm walking the path. I've been abused in the past. I, resurrected. So that was a first. But then shortly after that, I had this experience where with my spiritual awakening, it was a spiritual awakening, but not yet on board with Jesus. I was like, I still don't believe in that. Angels are real. I don't know about Jesus. Well, I didn't have any religious programming in this lifetime. Zero. When I say my parents tried to take us to church, I don't remember a word of it, and there was no religion in my upbringing. I thought it was a myth. I was like, oh, all religion is mythology. It's not real. I guess he really wanted me to believe in him because his spirit, his essence, his being embodied in me for 2 weeks. It was just this sudden thing that happened where I didn't tell anybody, but I could feel it the whole time. His words were nonstop going through my mind, just speaking the whole time. There was a radiance coming out of me that I don't think anybody could see, but I could feel it and know it. I would look in the mirror to see it, and I would see the radiance of him coming through my eyes and all around me when I would look. And it was just a nonstop embodiment of Jesus for those 2 weeks. And that was profound. That was just one, the experiences. And then I was on this spiritual forum, private group that you had to pay membership. So there was a large group of people in this spiritual community. And I one day decided, you know what? I'm just going to write about my experience. I've never told anybody. This is a safe place. I typed it out, and the little bit I told you, that's all I had to say about it. And 2 other women replied and said the same thing happened to them, and it was also for 2 weeks. So I realized in that moment that it was pretty mind-blowing. So there are a couple different kinds of walk-ins. One of the very common kinds that maybe a lot of people might know about if they know about a walk-in is that there's a soul, the person maybe wants to commit suicide, they're going through major trauma, they want to exit this lifetime, but on the soul plane, there's an agreement made with another soul to trade. So it's like, okay, I'm going to leave, and your soul is going to come in, a different soul, and inhabit this body to continue this life. So that's a soul, like a switch of the soul in exchange. That did not happen to me. And I didn't have there was no trauma happening at the time. But for me, mine was the other kind where an aspect of your higher self comes in to be embodied that hasn't been here before. And it feels like a walk-in. It is a walk-in, because when that happened to me, I didn't know that that's what had happened yet. But I was literally looking through new eyes, and I was looking around at humans, and in my mind, I was calling them humans. And I knew I wasn't one, because I was brand new here. That aspect of my soul was just here and new for the first time, looking at the humans and just saying, look at all these humans. And I was observing them as different, foreigners to me, and everything changed then. I would say my vibration changed to such a degree that I changed, but it wasn't that noticeable. I mean, it wasn't like I was acting differently, but that was an internal shift. And I started reading spiritual books as if they were food, just devouring book after book after book. So this was another layer of a massive spiritual awakening. My spiritual awakening started in 2000, and it was continuing rapidly, ongoing all these years with massive experiences that just kept happening. So that was how that walk-in went. It was permanent. So my being, my soul that was already here stayed, and this new aspect came in and integrated. So I think that I talked about a splitting. I feel like there's a lot of humanity is massively raising their consciousness, and then there are some parts of humanity that are still stuck in lower consciousness, and they still need their lessons and learning and experiences, because as we know, each soul chooses the life experience they're having. And this is really a hologram. This isn't like a static planet. It's like you get to choose your reality and what you're born into and what you're going to experience. And the interesting thing about today is that we can actually see, because of the internet and technology, what's happening in other places, but they don't even have anything to do with where we are as a soul. It's such a foreign thing. And so there's such a dichotomy of experiences on this planet. And it's always been that way. And I think it'll always be that way. But perhaps because we're all connected in quantum physics, there's this thing called entrainment, that those of us at a higher frequency are carrying the other ones up. You just can't see it, but it's happening gradually. Well, here we go. And it's the Mandela effect literally is this, parallel universes playing out in different ways. I think being authentic, living authentically and in alignment with your own soul. I would tell her to express herself more, and it's safe to do that. I think that God or source is everything, the all that is. Love is who we are and what we are.